This fresh coat of the startup life has been sprayed on nice and smooth by Wagner and the Flexo series of paint sprayers. Startup Nation, my wife decided she wanted to rehab her childhood home. The goal was to fix it up and invite a nice family to rent it out. We knew one of the biggest jobs we had to undertake was painting. However, from the walls, the cabinets, and even the siding outside, it was going to be a big task. As entrepreneurs with a company to run, we knew this was going to take up a lot of our time, which is why we decided to get a paint sprayer. And after much research, we decided to go with the sprayer from the Flexio series from Wagner. Startup Nation, these sprayers are top-notch because of its flexibility to paint or stain walls, furniture, cabinets, and more. It's 10 times faster than using a paintbrush, which was a big selling point for us. And you can paint or stain right from the can. It's also easy to clean in 5 minutes, and being great for indoor and outdoor projects, a paint sprayer from the Flexio series clearly needs to be part of the arsenal in your garage. So if you're ready to stain your deck, or like me, fill your daughter's request of a bubblegum pink room, up your game with a paint sprayer from the Flexio series by Wagner. Take it from me, your time will thank you.
It's time to be about that life, the startup life. Here's your host, Dominic Lawson.
All right, Startup Nation, so I hope you're ready to receive some value today. My name is Dominic Lawson, and this is the Startup Life, the show for entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals. Startup Nation, as we continue on our path of entrepreneurship and this new era of social distancing and COVID-19, having that personal effect on things is going to be more important now than ever. Building those relationships, but also having a personal touch on things when it comes to communicating with customers and stuff like that. It's going to be super important as we engage and move forward, which is why we have a great guest to kind of help us out with that today for sure. He is a graduate at the University of Pennsylvania, and he majored in economics at the Wharton School. He is a serial entrepreneur that has been featured in Fox News, Bloomberg Radio, and quoted in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, Variety, and more. He is also the founder of Handwrytten, a company that allows you to build deep and lasting bonds with your customers through the power of handwritten notes. He is, Startup Nation, David Wachs. DW, how's it going, my man?
I am well. How are you, sir?
I can't complain. Just living a dream.
Yeah.
Are you ready to pour some knowledge into Startup Nation today?
I am indeed. I will do my absolute best.
All righty. And DW, if you would, man, just kind of share with us your origin story and your background a little bit up until this point.
Yeah, for sure. So I always, like probably many of your guests, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, Dominic.
Gotcha.
Even when I was so I guess it goes all the way back to when I was like 5 or 6 years old. My mom would buy me stuff at Costco, like licorice nibs, and I'd go door to door with a red wagon selling the licorice nibs, and people would buy them from me just because I was a cute little 5-year-old. Okay. And then one day I didn't have anything to sell, so I took the family first aid kit. Right. And I went door to door, knocking on everybody's door. And I said, "Excuse me, are there any emergencies going on?" And they said, "No, but try back later." So that was my first time being an entrepreneur. And then when I got older, I went to the University of Pennsylvania. Like you said, I did an engineering and business program with the idea that I would one day use that to be an entrepreneur. And I specifically did computer science because I thought the capital expenditure of starting a software business would be a lot less than starting a factory. So that's why I did computer science. And but when I came out of school, this was the go-go 2000, like the year was 2000, and there was the startup bubble and all this stuff going on, and there was a lot of money to be made working for somebody else, as well as working, obviously doing a startup. But I had a ton of debt from Penn from my school, so I went to work for a big corporation, helping them pivot and become startup-y. Did that as a consultant for a few years. Then went into investment banking for a year and into venture capital. I always thought, I'd actually worked at a venture capital shop while in college. And I thought, if I'm not an entrepreneur for a while, let me be a venture capitalist. So I went to work for a venture capitalist in San Diego. And that experience turned out to be a total train wreck. Best told over beers, because I have some crazy stories where my office was bugged.
Wow.
He was paranoid and he thought I would be doing weird stuff. So he had video cameras on me, just aimed on me. And it all came after 4 months. It came to a screeching halt. This was in 2014.
Gotcha.
It came to 2004. Okay. It came to a screeching halt when he fired me, basically claiming I sold stock that the company had without his permission. And anybody in San Diego who knew this guy knew nobody could do anything without his permission, and the brokerage firm wouldn't allow it, et cetera. I mean, it wouldn't have happened. But he blamed the stock transaction on me, and he fired me. He said I could come back if I would admit to selling the stock. And I wasn't born yesterday. So I said no. And I was out on the street. And basically all the years prior, so I guess for the 4 or 5 years prior to that experience, I had spent every last dime paying down school debt. And I had zero savings, which is not the way to go, because you never know if you're going to get fired and then you're out on your ass and you have no nest egg, to sit back on and to support you. So I actually moved back to Scottsdale, Arizona, where I grew up, and I, with my head between my legs, and I had dinner with my father. He put me up in a apartment that he had unrented. He owned some properties. And I had dinner with my father, and we started talking about business ideas. And he said, well, wouldn't it be great to use BlackBerries or barcodes to provide information on houses? Mind you, this was before the iPhone.
Right.
So the idea of, instant information using an app did not exist. So I said, well, maybe not BlackBerries or barcodes, but what about text messaging? Where you see a sign hanging in front of the property. It says text in to get info on the property. You get the info and the realtor gets the lead. And that started my true experience in entrepreneurship with a company called Cellit, Cellit. And that company was a text messaging company. We started with real estate. We quickly added retail. So we ended up sending millions of text messages on behalf of brands like IKEA and Office Max and Sam's Club and all these large retailers, in addition to Auto Trader and the Chicago Tribune and Marie Claire magazine, and on and on and on. We were doing millions of text messages a day on behalf of all them. Gotcha. And then I sold that company in 2012 to a company called ePrize, which was an online promotions company based out of Detroit, and worked for them for 2 years during what's called an earn-out, which is when you sell a company, they don't want you to just hand over the keys and walk away. They want you to run the company with them for a few years. So I did that 2-year earn-out with them.
Right.
And during this 2 years, what I realized was, our text messaging really worked. I mean, whenever we sent out a campaign for Tropical Smoothie Cafes, which is kind of like a smoothie shop franchise, whenever we sent out a text message for them, they would have lines around the block. Or if we did it for, whatever, Abercrombie, they would have people lined up when the mall opened, etc. But at the same time, people were getting overrun with digital communication, whether it was text messages or emails. The average office worker gets over 300 emails a day. Or back in 2012, 2013, Twitter and Slack and all these other forms were proliferating. And also emails through automated sales email systems like Salesforce or PersistIQ, all these different sales systems were making it very easy to send a totally personalized email that looked like it was typed by you, but it really wasn't. It was, just auto sent. And because of that, people realized the value of those touch points was diminishing. So, you could send, you could receive a quote unquote personalized email from you, Dominic, and people would be like, was it really sent by him? I don't know. I'm not even going to read it. I'll read it when I get through these other 300 emails I received. So I'm sitting there in my office at ePrize, and I see the handwritten notes written, sent to me, and they're on display on my bookshelf behind my desk. And when I want to send handwritten notes to my clients and employees when I was ready to leave Cellit after those 2 years of earnout, I saw the value in sending handwritten notes. And I sat down to write them. And I got through like 5 or 6. And I'm like, this is too hard. My hand cramped. I kept screwing up. I'd have to pull new cards out. I didn't have the stamps. I didn't have the stationery, and on and on and on, like I think a lot of people do. So I said, there has to be a better way. Gotcha. So the day after I finished up at ePrize Cellit, which is now called HelloWord, and actually now it's a part of Merkle, so it's gone through many, many iterations. But anyway, when I finished up with that, the next day I started Handwrytten. And the idea behind this company, and I'm not going to, I don't want this to be a sales pitch. I'll be real quick here. The idea of this company is we automate the quote unquote unautomatable by using robotic technology to send handwritten notes at scale. So on the front end, we have a website, iPhone app for Android and iPhone, app for iPhone and Android, plugins through Zapier, which is a super cool tool I can talk about, Salesforce.com integration, HubSpot integration, etc., that lets you submit handwritten notes into our system. And then on the other side of that technology, we have robots that we build here in our facility in Phoenix, Arizona, and we write out those notes in the handwriting style of your choice, including your own handwriting if you want us to duplicate it. We then write that, we put a real, we handwrite the envelope as well. If you want, we can insert an insert such as a gift card to Starbucks or Target, etc. And then we put a real stamp on it and stick it in the mail, and it looks totally authentic. We currently have 95 robots. We build, prior to COVID, we were building more every week. We've taken a pause on the building as we have plenty of capacity right now. But that's kind of the deal. And so we're completely vertically integrated. We design our own robots, we build them, we write our own software. The entire thing is built in-house. And I am very confident that we're the world leader at this point in sending handwritten notes. And we do this for everything from individual people that want to send their mom or sister or whatever a birthday card, all the way up to major luxury brands, e-tailers, retailers, pretty much this guy, insurance brokers, real estate agents, etc. Pretty much anybody that thinks a handwritten note will stand out from the pack of electronic communication will use us or can use us. And if you go to handwrytten.com and you click the resources tab, you can find all sorts of stats that prove handwritten notes work. But yeah, that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Absolutely. And Startup Nation, we have that website there in the show notes. If you listen to the replay on the podcast, handwrytten.com. That's handwrytten.com. Like I said, we have a link there in the show notes for easy access. I want to ask you 2 follow-ups really quickly, David, if I could, because you're actually the second person to come on the show who was a Red Wagon entrepreneur back when they were kids, right? We actually had the chairman of JetBlue Airways come on the show, and he had that same experience. Tell me a little bit about that a little bit more, man. Tell me about that experience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, it's funny. And actually, to that point, Red Wagon, the cards, the line of cards that we designed. So we started with Handwrytten. We started showcasing other people's cards.
Gotcha.
So, we'd work with artisans and develop, and they'd ship us their cards and we'd write them out. But when we're doing these bulk campaigns for corporations, they don't want to spend the money associated with the licensing, et cetera. So we came up with our own line of cards, and they're all called Red Wagon cards on the back. They're not called Handwrytten because we don't want to give away the secret sauce that, this note was sent by Handwrytten and not by them.
Right.
So they're called Red Wagon, and it's strictly because of the red wagon I used when I was growing up. And it wasn't even my wagon. It was my older brother's, but I stole it from him and I went door to door selling, and, the 52 cents or whatever I made was very exciting to me. And then actually in high school, and this is before really the Michael Dells of the world were out there, doing computers the way they do them now. But back when I was in high school, I used to build or assemble personal computers and sell those. So I was a huge nerd. But that was MacroLogic Solutions was the first LLC that I ever operated. And that was interesting because what happened was, and this is an interesting takeaway, we actually sold a ton of computers. And I would say 80% of them came from referrals from one person. And that person's name was Dana, who I think I met once.
Right.
And what happened is my mother, and again, I was in high school, so I had a proud mother. My mother went to get her nails done. And when she got her nails done, she told the nail person, they gab at each other, whatever. And she told the nail person what her son was doing. And then other people would come in and get their nails done and say they were looking for a computer. And Dana would tell them, "Oh, I know just the guy." And that built our business.
Wow.
It was a small business. I was busy in high school and everything. But it was certainly a great experience into starting a business and all that. And it was funny because at the same time, I would call up my distributors who were in Phoenix, and I'd say, "Hello, this is David Wachs. I'm with MacroLogic Solutions." And I'd place an order for a bunch of computer parts or whatever. And then they would say, "Okay, that'll be ready if you want to come down and pick it up." And I'd say, "Well, I can't come down, but I'll send my runner boy to pick them up." And then I'd get in the car and go down and pick them up. And for about a year, I would do this with one of my main distributors. And finally, something happened where he figured out that the runner boy ran the company, and he was floored.
Right.
But yeah, I think certain people just have the itch, and I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs in your listenership have the itch, and they've had it since a young age.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, the Red Wagon was just. It all started with licorice nibs and just having some extra around the house and wanting to get rid of them and make some money.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that story. I really didn't expect it to tie in back to Handwrytten, but that's a fascinating story.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And one of the things you said, which I thought was interesting, is about building those relationships, but those relationship infrastructures, how like your hub kind of came from that was that hair salon, hair dryer, hair.
That nail lady, the woman that did my mother's nails.
Right.
And you just never know who's going to be an influencer.
Absolutely. It's just amazing. And Startup Nation, that's one of the important reasons why it's, to build relationships, because you just never know. That one person may be responsible, like in this case, 80% of your business. So thank you for sharing that for sure.
Yeah. It was crazy. And I owe her a debt of gratitude for all the business she sent my way. And I think at one point we gave her like some smoking deal on a printer that she wanted to buy or something. Gotcha. Because of all the the help she lent us.
For sure. Thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you about Cellit really quickly, because a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we have that conversation with ourselves, a lot of times in the beginning, but sometimes it's after we started the company, we've had it 6, 7, 8 years, about, do I want to stay in the company or is it time to sell? Kind of walk through that conversation with yourself, that conversation with your team, when it comes to making that decision, because it's not an easy one.
Yeah. So as your listeners probably know, being an entrepreneur is tough.
Right.
Really tough. And the first few years are super tough, especially, I think people see these venture capital backed companies out there that, that's such a small minority of companies out there. Most people really just put all their savings into a company and their nose to the grindstone and really need to scrap it together and make it work. And that's what Cellit was. We never took... We did take an investment from one woman, which we ended up giving back a couple months later due to a difference in opinion.
Gotcha.
But it's tough, and early on, I got approached by a gentleman named Todd that worked for an investment bank. I was at a conference, and he approached me and he said, "Hey, if you're ever looking to sell, contact me." And I kind of laughed. I said, boy, that's very flattering, but we are way too small to sell. Like, we'd be nothing for you.
Exactly.
And he said, well, give yourself a couple of years, then call me. And so what happened was I held on to that business for 7 years, and I was getting tired of scrapping for cash. I mean, actually, after about four years, we were in a really good position, but it became a little bit monotonous, and there were some life changes I wanted to make where I lived and all that stuff. And so I started talking to investment bankers and Todd again about, gee, is it the right time to sell? And then I started seeing some big changes in the industry of text messaging. For one, the iPhone and push notifications and iPhone apps were really overtaking my bread and butter, which was text SMS messaging. And while we pivoted and we certainly supported iPhone apps and push notifications, developing a iPhone app did not have the same revenue model, the subscription revenue model that I enjoyed in doing text messaging. Gotcha. So I wanted to pivot out of that business and get it and start anew. Additionally, there was a whole bunch of new regulatory compliance with text that made our business just very scary. We weren't doing anything wrong. Everybody that received a text from us at some point opted into our service. However, if somebody claimed that they did not opt in, and for whatever reason we couldn't find proof that they did not, we could be in a whole world of hurt. So basically, we had an experience where these new compliance rules came out, and we were based in Chicago, and ironically, some kid at Northwestern University Law School thought he'd make a quick buck by doing a class action suit against us, claiming our client, which was a restaurant group in Chicago, sent them a text without their consent. We were able to trace back who it was, and we were able to see that, yes, in fact, we did get their consent. But had we not gotten their consent, or if for whatever reason something happened, there's just all sorts of ways that something could happen where we could get in trouble. It would be $500 per text message, $500 to $1,000 per text message sent. And if we sent 1,000 text messages, it could be $500,000 to $1 million in fines off one blip in the pocket that most people don't even care about. You know what I mean? Versus, and what was so enraging is this is back when Wells Fargo was signing people up for auto loans that they didn't request, and I don't know if you remember that whole thing.
I used to work at Wells Fargo. I know a little something about that.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I know a little something about that.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
so I at the time I was like, well, this is crazy. No offense to Wells Fargo, Wells Fargo's fine per incident of signing somebody up for an auto loan that they didn't request was way less than our fine per incident if we sent them a text message.
That's crazy.
So I was just like, this business is too hot to handle. So I looked for a buyer at that point, and I reapproached Todd. We did what's called a process, which I highly, highly recommend. To anybody selling their company, don't just sell. Certainly don't sell to the person that just approaches you. What you need to do is you need to run a process. And what a process is, it's kind of an auction. So the way this works is you hire an investment bank. The investment bank approaches, if you were approached, to sell, they approach that company, but they also approach 10, 20 other companies. And then they wait for all the offers to come in, and then you pick the highest offer, and you create a competitive bidding environment. You don't just roll over and take the first dollar that somebody offers you, because that's going to be you're going to regret that for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
So I sold Cellit back then. It was interesting. We had 3 interested buyers. We had a company on the West Coast. I don't want to get into names, but it was a big email company based out of the Silicon Valley area.
Gotcha.
We had a company in the middle of the country, HelloWord or ePrize, the online cost contesting company. And then we had a company on the East Coast, which ended up turning out to be Merkle, which is the company that ended up buying ePrize. So in the end, I ended up with them anyway. But after running this process, ePrize provided the best offer. It also provided the best cultural fit, which was really, really important for me and my employees. And it was also a great geographic fit because they were opening up an office in Chicago. We were in Chicago and we just merged with that office, a fresh start, because it was a new office for them. It would be a new office for us. It kind of gave my employees the best chances for success.
For sure.
So that was so that experience. Cellit was started with unemployment money. I was fired from that venture capital firm. I took a very little bit of money from my father and a place to live that my father gave me, and I hunkered down for a year, living off unemployment. And my big night out on the town was going to Costco for a $1.50 hot dog and drink.
Right.
But I got that company off the ground, and it was very hard for several years, and then I sold it, and had a nice liquidity event. And then when I started Handwrytten, it was very different because I already had the money to start Handwrytten,
Right.
and it hasn't been such a struggle. I mean, Handwrytten is actually a slower growth company than Cellit was. Cellit took off in about 2 years. Handwrytten's taken 5 or 6 to really get going.
Right.
But
that kind of makes sense given the nature of both of those businesses, though.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right, for sure.
But luckily, I have the runway with Handwrytten because I have some money in my pocket to be able to do it.
Right, for sure, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. And Startup Nation, David said something I thought was really interesting given our times or whatever. You said you started Cellit with what? Unemployment money. So given that how, a lot of people are kind of out of work and trying to figure out what to do next, that may be an avenue to start that company that you've been thinking about. Just wanted to throw that out there for sure. Thank you for sharing that, David. Once again, we're talking to David Wachs, the founder of Handwrytten. So I want to ask about Handwrytten a little bit because I think it's an amazing company. Like you said, in this day where, we're trying to harden our stance. Well, not necessarily harden our stance, reinvigorate our relationship with customers. I think handwritten notes really do go a long way. I want to ask you this, though, because, you're using automation to do the handwritten notes. And I think the part where you can kind of redo handwritten notes in somebody's I lost my
handwriting style.
Yeah, a handwriting style. I think that's fascinating. But I want to ask you this: what do you say to people who say that like you're kind of defeating the purpose a little bit? It's like you're using automation to kind of do something that's personal. Because I imagine you get some of that pushback a little bit.
Absolutely, right. And it's not right for everybody.
Right.
But here's the thing: like the effort it takes to sit down and decide I'm going to send a piece of personalized mail to anybody shows a level of thoughtfulness that most people don't have. I'm not talking about handwritten notes or robotically written handwritten with a Y notes.
Right.
I'm just saying sending a piece of mail to somebody that's not just a bulk slick catalog or whatever shows a level of thoughtfulness. Sending an actual handwritten note that you sat down to write yourself is clearly the most thoughtful. Mm-hmm. But we are the in-between. We are a way for you to scale that, because what happens is, as much as you'd like to send an actual handwritten note to your 400 customers or whatever it is, you're never going to get there. You just don't have the time. Right. We have a perfume brand that uses us with their online sales. So it's a very, very high-end perfume. Mm-hmm. And their cologne is something I could never afford.
Gotcha.
But their online sales, if you order their cologne and perfume online, they'll include a handwritten note from us with that cologne.
Right.
I walked into a department store pre-COVID, and I was looking at the product and putting it out to my wife and my kids and all that stuff. And a woman walked over and she said, "Oh, can I, show this to you?" I said, No. I just, and I explained what we did. And she said, "Man, I wish the perfume brand would allow us to use you because we're forced to manually write those handwritten notes." And I said, "And do you do it?" And she said, "No, we don't have the time." And that's the problem, is people just don't have the time to sit down and send the notes of appreciation that they want to send.
Right.
So Is it good? Is it as good as an actual handwritten note? No, but it comes close.
Absolutely.
And the ink smears. What I mean by that is the ink smears, literally. You can take your finger, lick it, rub it on the penned note, and it smears.
Right.
People, by and large, will not know that this note was not written by you. The only way I would bet the only way that they're going to know that this note isn't written by you is if you ask them. If you ask them, what did you think of that note? Their answer is going to be, oh, I loved it. Thank you very much. How thoughtful. If you ask them, did you think that note was written by a robot? That card will then go through a level of scrutiny that it wasn't through before.
Right.
And then they have the 50-50 to guess, yes, it was written by a robot. But unless you ask them, was it written by a robot, their response is going to be, how thoughtful of you to send me a note in the first place. I mean, my wife, and she's been with me for the 6 years that I've been running this company,
Right.
She receives cards from people using our service. And she's amazed. She's like, oh, what nice handwriting they have. And I laugh and I say, honey, that's written by Handwrytten. And she doesn't even know. And she works, her husband runs the company.
Right. For sure. I want to ask you this as well, because you talked about this earlier as far as like the integration part, with like Salesforce and Zapier and Amazon and stuff like that. Talk about how you go about finding the right partners to do that with. Because imagine you just can't up and just have that and do that with everybody, even if they have the capability to kind of integrate with Handwrytten.
Yeah, so Zapier, however it's pronounced,
right,
is a godsend because that allows us, for those that don't know what Zapier is, it's the hub, it's the central hub of a wheel. And imagine you have a bicycle wheel where that's the hub, and then all these apps are on the spokes. So your CRM system or your e-commerce system. So for instance, if you run a Shopify store,
right,
that Shopify is a hub, Shopify is a spoke. The hub is Zapier, and another spoke is Handwrytten. Because Handwrytten runs to the hub and then runs out to the spoke, we therefore connect with Shopify. So by being a connector by being a Zap in Shopify, we instantly connect with thousands of programs. I actually wrote that in integration personally, so I'm familiar with how to do that, and we're set up on Zapier for that. Salesforce, we saw Salesforce as an opportunity for deep integration. We actually hired a Salesforce developer because that's that requires a domain of expertise we didn't have in-house.
Makes sense.
And we've had that built, and it's been under ongoing revisions for the last several years. But it is out there on version 2.18 or something like that. And that app plugs directly into Salesforce and adds a send Handwrytten note button to every contact, account, lead, and opportunity in your system. So if you're familiar with Salesforce, you have a contact. You also have that contact sits under an account, which is a company. And then you have various opportunities and leads based off that too. All those screens have a button right there that says send Handwrytten note. When you click it, within Salesforce, you can go through the flow of sending a handwritten note. So it automatically pulls down their contact information. You can view all the cards in Handwrytten. You can choose one, add a message, and hit send. And then that activity of sending it is recorded back to the activity pane within Salesforce. So you can then see, oh, okay, I spoke to Dominic on Tuesday. I had an in-person meeting on Wednesday, and I sent him a handwritten note on Thursday.
Right.
We do kind of sort of the same thing for HubSpot. There, it's a little less integrated, but it works as well. But those are kind of the two big direct integrations we have. We are looking to integrate with Shopify as well, even though I feel most of our Shopify integration is handled just fine through Zapier. But yeah, I mean, our whole idea is become a platform for sending handwritten notes, not a website, not an app. In fact, I write for Inc. magazine occasionally, and I wrote a whole article on designing your service to be a platform, not not just to be a website or an app. And there's certain things that you should do up front to really set yourself up to be a platform.
Right.
And that people can Google that article. But yeah, that's been a very large driver of our growth. Zapier in particular, but Salesforce as well. Those have been very large drivers of our growth.
All right, Startup Nation. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We got to pay some bills. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson, and you're listening to The Startup Life. This fresh coat of the Startup Life has been sprayed on nice and smooth by Wagner and the Flexo series of paint sprayers. Startup Nation, my wife decided she wanted to rehab her childhood home. The goal was to fix it up and invite a nice family to rent it out. We knew one of the biggest jobs we had to undertake was painting. However, from the walls, the cabinets, and even the siding outside, it was going to be a big task. As entrepreneurs with a company to run, we knew this was going to take up a lot of our time, which is why we decided to get a paint sprayer. And after much research, we decided to go with the sprayer from the Flexio series from Wagner. Startup Nation, these sprayers are top-notch because of its flexibility to paint or stain walls, furniture, cabinets, and more. It's 10 times faster than using a paintbrush, which was a big selling point for us. And you can paint or stain right from the can. It's also easy to clean in 5 minutes, and being great for indoor and outdoor projects, a paint sprayer from the Flexio series clearly needs to be part of the arsenal in your garage. So if you're ready to stain your deck, or like me, fill your daughter's request of a bubblegum pink room, up your game with a paint sprayer from the Flexio series by Wagner. Take it from me, your time will thank you. This episode of The Startup Life is sponsored by SaveTheChildren.org. Startup Nation, Save the Children believes every child deserves a future. In the United States and around the world, they work every day to give children a healthy start in life, the opportunity to learn, and protection from harm. They deliver lasting results for millions of children, including those hardest to reach. They do whatever it takes for children every day, and in times of crisis, transforming their lives and the future we share. Startup Nation, right now, the coronavirus is the biggest global health crisis in our lifetime. It threatens children in every way. COVID-19 has already left many children without caregivers, out of school, and exposed to violence and exploitation. Child poverty is rising. With your support, we can help children in unsafe households and help support distance learning in the face of school closures. Here are some ways your support can make a difference. For just $5, you can buy a baby's first book, providing comfort and inspiring lifelong learning. And for $25, you can serve a nutritious breakfast and lunch to 5 out-of-school children in need. And there's many other ways you can help support Startup Nation. So go to SaveTheChildren.org/SaveKids or www.SaveTheChildren.org/SaveKids. So if you're ready to make a difference, Startup Nation, remember SaveTheChildren.org. Make the change for children. The Startup Life is powered by Ladder. Startup Nation, as an entrepreneur, you are the engine that powers your business. We have had many entrepreneurs on the show, from those that played Division II basketball, quite a few Ironman participants, and even an NFL quarterback. And the one thing they all have in common is that they know getting early morning workout wins leads to business success for the day. However, it's super important what fuel you use for your workout to get that early morning success. And that's where Ladder comes in. Ladder is a sports nutrition company founded by LeBron James and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Unlike other supplements, every batch is tested by a third party that is trusted by all major professional sports organizations, including the NBA, NFL, MLB, and more, to verify the highest standards for quality, but more importantly, safety. Ladder's goal is to help you unlock your best in any situation. Right now, that means access to special offers and expert advice from their community. Personally, I like superfood greens. Not only does it include the most essential nutrients that are hard to get in your diet, like magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, and vitamin D, they also included the Rodelio root, which helps keep you healthier when stress is high, but also it helps support immunity according to many studies. Use code BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off everything site-wide at ladder.sport. That's BETTEREVERYDAY for 30% off at ladder.sport. So maybe you're not trying to be a 4-time league MVP or a 7-time Mr. Olympia, but you still need the tools to elevate your health that elevates your business. So go with Ladder and prepare to get better every day. All right, Startup Nation, welcome back as we continue our conversation with today's guest here on The Startup Life. And once again, Startup Nation, like I said, I think given this era of the coronavirus and trying to do business and strengthening that relationship with your customers, I think having Handwrytten as part of your entrepreneurial toolkit, as part of your customer service strategy is very important. Once again, go to handwrytten.com. That's HANDWRYTTEN.com. We have a link there in the show notes for easy access if you're listening to the replay on the podcast. I would actually think you need to put this in your toolkit. I think it's really cool because, have that personal touch really does go a long way and can be a competitive advantage for you as well. And David, clearly, man, you were on my laptop and looking at my notes because I was going to mention that you write for Inc. magazine once, and stuff like that. So I actually wanted to ask you about one of your pieces. You wrote something called 5 Mistakes That Crush Innovation and How to Fix Them. And I wanted to, and you have, different ones, like you have ideas are dismissed before they fully explore them, which I thought was a good one. Your team has no breathing room to experiment, stuff like that. But I wanted to ask you about, you focus on individuals instead of building teams. Kind of share with us your doctrine on that a little bit, if you don't mind, sir.
Yeah, I think it's really important to build a collaborative organization and to have tools to enable that collaboration. Our company runs on Slack. It could easily run on Microsoft Teams or whatever, but especially now with COVID, it's so important to create those connections where people feel included. And Slack has been really great for that. But more to your point, if you have people in silos where they don't feel their voice is appreciated, they're not going to share their what could be brilliant ideas or ways to improve things or whatever it might be. And we are very focused here at Handwrytten on creating a flat organization where everybody feels they have a say in really anything. Right. So with sales, for instance, our sales teams are made up of the salespeople, the account managers that then support those salespeople, graphic designers if new artwork is required to support the client, right, engineers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're really trying to create an environment where the communication tools are there and the space, whether it's physical space or electronic space or whatever, is there to allow people to collaborate and share ideas and brainstorm and that type of thing. The first point in there was about dismissing ideas before they're kind of, I think there's so much that we can do just around language.
Absolutely.
Just when somebody has an idea, not to dismiss it and say, oh, that's a dumb idea, or gee, thanks for your input, but to really say, oh, that's interesting. How could that apply here? Or now that we know that clients, that our issue is X, how does your thing help solve for Y? There's just so much about language that can really assist there. Right. And then back in my days at Penn, we talked, I was in some innovation classes, and one of the big things was setting aside time for innovation. So I think 3M is always the golden child example here, but 3M allowed its employees, I think 25 or 30% of their time to work on pet projects. Right. And from that came the sticky note, which is a multi-billion-dollar project or program for 3M, product for 3M. So we try to set aside time, 20% of people's time to allow them to work on whatever they want, as long as there's some tie back to Handwrytten. And this has led to some really great engineering initiatives in our company. For instance, just the simple act of having pen holders closer to the robots. We have some code that we might be open sourcing to the public that allows people to manage fonts. This really has nothing to do with Handwrytten, but it's just font management tools. graphic designs. There's all sorts of ways where we can kind of give back to the community and improve things throughout our office, that if we just give our employees the space to do that.
Gotcha. It's funny you mention that, because we've had previous guests who shared that sentiment, allowing your team members to kind of have that space for creativity, have that space for innovation, which ultimately means that, that Handwrytten or the company that somebody's in actually does benefit, even when you carve out that time. Because we see time and time again that where we have companies where you don't allow that time and they go off and build billion-dollar businesses elsewhere, when that could have been rolled into your company all the while. But I appreciate
exactly.
I appreciate you sharing that, David, for sure. What are you seeing out there as far as because you talked about how you kind of tampered down production of the robots and stuff like that in the company and stuff like that. What are some of those other precautions, some of those other pivots or shifts that you're making with Handwrytten due to COVID-19 or the coronavirus?
Yeah, so we were early on it, and I think it's because I'm a paranoid guy, and I've got 2 young kids at home, and I am hyper paranoid. So very early on, early March, or maybe late February, I think it was early March, we decided to space out desks a lot farther than they were prior.
Gotcha.
We added hand sanitizing stations like you'd see in a hospital throughout our facility, way before anybody else really was doing this. Mm-hmm. We instituted a 10-minute per morning, 10-minute per before you leave cleaning, where you had to go and spend 10 minutes at both times cleaning your office and everything else you touch. And 10 minutes is actually a long time. Most people can clean their desk off in 2 minutes, and that forces you 8 minutes to figure out other stuff to clean.
Right.
So we started all that, and then we moved all non-essential office workers home. So really, I'm right now the only non-essential office worker at the office. What I mean by non-essential office worker is not that they're not essential. It means they're not essential in our facility. And there's only 2 types of people that are, or 3 types of people that are. There's the people that operate the robots. There's the people that stuff the cards. And by the way, all our card stuffers and robot operators wear masks at all times. Right. And then there's the engineers that have to fix the robots when they break. So those 3 types of people are the only people in the office, except for me, and I should get out of here. Gotcha. Everybody else is working from home. And I hate this because it really takes a toll on culture. But in the free flow of ideas we were talking about before, and just having fun and all the rest that's so important. But it was really, like so many people, it's really necessary in order to keep this company going. I used to have my office, my personal dog, who's the chief cuddle officer out here, Lulu, come to work with me every day. Right. But I'm worried she's a vector, so I leave her at home. She would run from person to person, and people would pet her, and then so one person pets her, goes to the next. I just didn't want all that going on either. Sure. So we've done all those measures. Now we just had our first scare of somebody that thought they had COVID. They don't, thank God. But since then, when you come into the office, the first thing you do is you take your temperature. There's a forehead thermometer waiting for you when you open up the door. And there's a pulse oximeter. So you have to stick your finger in the thing, and your pulse is below 90. Not only do you not come in the office, you call your doctor. Right. It says call your doctor and leave if your pulse is below 90. So we do that. Our main entrance is completely shut. It locked, the gate is down, all that. Right. And we've limited entry to one office. We're not accepting visitors. And then we used to accept people's custom cards if they wanted to, write our note or have us write notes on their card stock. Right. Now there's you ship us your cards. There's going to be a week delay between the time we receive it and the time we'll make it available, because we don't want to touch them. So we leave them in the box. We're just hyper paranoid around here, but everything's in the sake of safety. So
For sure.
So that's kind of what we're doing.
For sure.
And we are seeing the value, and this is a little bit of a sales pitch, but we are seeing the value of reaching out to your customers during this time. Like being able to stay in touch. A lot of our clients are using this as an opportunity to say, how much they're thinking of their clients and they care about them. And so business hasn't been impacted too much. I mean, we're definitely down,
right?
But it's not over the top because we have something that kind of applies to showing people you care.
Gotcha. No, by the way, we don't mind sales pitches on the Startup Life for sure. We definitely want to highlight what you do in businesses and stuff like that. No, I appreciate that for sure. I want to ask you this really quickly because, and kind of get your commentary on this a little bit. As we, we're reopening the economy and stuff like that, and we're there's talk of another type of like stimulus package to kind of help the American people and stuff like that. And in that stimulus package, one of those things that has come up is the cancellation of student debt. And I know you kind of mentioned that having debt while you was going to school and stuff like that. How do you feel about that? Are you in favor, against, neutral? What's your take on that, if you don't mind me asking?
Boy, that is an excellent question.
Yeah, be as honest if you want.
Yeah, I mean, this again gets into a whole other conversation, Absolutely. But I think student debts, I was able to get out of it. I think a lot of people can eventually get out of it. But right now, if that's going to make the difference for somebody, I think we should look at canceling it. I think a bigger thing, and this is, my personal opinion, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody here. I think there needs to be options for public health care because so many people, I just got my renewal notice from my office healthcare plan saying, congratulations, your company's healthcare plan is only going up 11% this year. Congratulations. Right. You know what I mean? That's a lot. And when you're an entrepreneur, but your family's well-being is tied to working at your company, how can you be an entrepreneur? How could you leave to start that and have that American dream opportunity, especially with healthcare rates where they are today? When I started Cellit, I was able to get a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan for like $200 a month, and it was relatively affordable. But up until a few years ago, Handwrytten didn't qualify for a company plan. So I was spending, this is 12 years later or whatever, I was spending $1,000 a month for healthcare that covered nothing. It had like a $10,000 deductible. So that, to me, that's worthless healthcare, but I was spending all that money, and most people starting businesses today can't do it. And it is killing the American dream. And then through the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, what it does, or what it did when I was a part of it 2 years ago, it lumped entrepreneurs, which are quote unquote the heroes of American industry, right? Mm-hmm. It lumps entrepreneurs with the highest risk pool people in the United States by saying they're both just unemployed or unemployed. Anybody in the ACA is the biggest risk pool in the United States and therefore pays for it with these ridiculous plans that don't offer anything in return. And I think this country needs to take a look at what every other country is doing and try to figure out a way to make it work here. And again, I'm not looking to get political here, but yes, I think student debt is important to consider relieving, if that'll, or at least putting a forbearance on it, where for a year it goes it's just paused, right? Like there's just, you don't pay your student debt for a year. It doesn't go anywhere, but it's just, but it doesn't accrue interest for that year.
Gotcha.
But I think that, the reason they're attacking student debt and they're not attacking home healthcare is because it's not a huge lobbying organization of nearly the same magnitude as there is the healthcare lobbyists. And, there's not as many people in the pockets. And again, I apologize. This is strictly my viewpoint. I'm not here to espouse politics. I'm here to talk about handwritten notes and how they can benefit people. But I don't know if I could have started Cellit today. And had I not started Cellit, I wouldn't be able to start Handwrytten. And I wouldn't have been able, with Cellit at my high, I think I had 26 employees. I wouldn't have been able to create jobs for 26 people, pay taxes for those, the payroll taxes for those 26 people, have them pay their own taxes, have them go out and buy goods and services. And I wouldn't be able to do that because I wouldn't be able to get the healthcare, at $1,000 a month.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to do it. And so if we want to spur innovation in this country and create a society where the American dream lives, there has to be an option. And it doesn't have to be the only option. But back when the ACA was getting formed, there was the idea of a public option, and it got stomped on by the lobbyists. And having just a public option where people could get minimal health care for a minimal price,
right.
We need, if we want the American dream to survive, of being able, there's nothing about liberty if your healthcare is tied to your work.
Gotcha. I hear that. And I appreciate your candor. Everybody knows that the Startup Life, we're an apolitical show, but your value and your experiences kind of speak to your story, which is why I appreciate the way you framed it, because you talked about how, had you not had that path, then maybe Cellit wouldn't be here, maybe Handwrytten wouldn't be here. And we pride ourselves on free enterprise here in this country. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. And that's, that's all I'll say.
Of course.
We've been doing we did a Black Lives Matter card recently.
Gotcha.
For, just to, basically it was a $2 card, and 100%. So usually our cards are $3.25. $3.25 plus postage. So they come out to about $3.80 when you have the 55-cent stamp. This card was $1.45 plus postage, so $2, including the stamp. And it says Black Lives Matter. We have another one that says about pride. And we thought, with everything going on with George Floyd, this would be a nice way to get the message out. And then 100% of the profits go to causes. The Black Lives Matter, 100% of the profits go to the NAACP. The Pride card, 100% of the profits go to the ACLU.
Gotcha.
And we thought of it as a nothing burger. If people didn't want to send them, fine, send one of our other cards. You know what I mean? And you would be amazed at the vitriol and the hate that we got. And hey, don't be political. And we weren't trying to be political. We were just trying to show our compassion for our fellow patriots and man and women. So since that experience, I've really I just want people to know I'm not here to be political. I'm just here to help.
Absolutely. No, I definitely understand that. But I will say this. First of all, as an African American, I appreciate what you were trying to do. I definitely appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. But I think also we get to a dangerous place in America where we can't disagree civilly. You know what I mean? We really do. And so I think that's a lesson that all of us can kind of learn and take to heart, because once again, look, we don't all come from the same background. We don't all have the same value system. We don't all have the same story. So we should be able to kind of have these disagreements, but also have them civilly and talk about it. And hopefully we can come up with a solution. Great. And if not, well, at the very least, we can keep that respect and that civilness amongst one another, especially in a time where, if there was ever a time we need each other, it's right now during a world.
Exactly.
So,
and then we didn't at Handwrytten, we didn't get aggressive with anybody that complained.
Right, of course.
There were a few people that were very civil and that said, hey, why don't you have a
like Blue Lives
All Lives Matter, which I kind of thought missed the point, or a support the police card or something like that.
Gotcha.
And, we responded to all those. But then there were just people that didn't deserve a response, that were, F you guys, or, or one guy called me up and and tore my ear out about how he didn't appreciate us doing that, and that the values of those people, blah, blah, blah. And it was kind of sickening that this, here we are in the future where we should have flying cars. We do have self-driving cars,
That's
but
true.
when I was a kid, we thought we'd have flying cars and everything else, but we're still dealing with these divides that have existed for 500 years or whatever. So anyway, don't mean to side rail the conversation.
It's all good. It's all good. I appreciate your sentiment. I appreciate what you were trying to do. I appreciate that for sure. Once again, Startup Nation, we're wrapping up with David Wachs, the founder of Handwrytten. Once again, you can go to the show notes if you listen to the replay on the podcast to check out the website for Handwrytten. Man, let me ask you this, man. Given everything that's going on in COVID-19, you mentioned your wife and your 2 young kids. What are you guys doing to stay sane these days? Are you're sitting down watching movies? You're having like game nights? What's going on at the Wachs household?
Yeah, so my kids are really young. I've got a 1.5-year-old and a kid that's almost 3.
Okay.
And quite frankly, they're not seeing friends.
Right.
I feel really bad for them. I feel they're really missing out, but I try to come home from work early every day, and we hop in that pool as quickly as I get home.
Right.
Because they don't. Yeah, it's hard. It's too hard for my wife to juggle 2 kids in the pool.
Right. Sure.
But I
Especially
do
2
that. I
kids,
get in there and I just try to keep them as active as I can.
Right.
And they are getting too much TV right now, and there's, we've just kind of accepted it.
Right.
We go on family walks. We're in Arizona, where it is bloody hot right now.
Right.
So it's a little hard to do that during the day. So unfortunately, our kids are kind of trapped in the house a little bit. And then, we try to go on little, go to a park or something, but then one of the kids inevitably has to use the bathroom, and then that makes things very difficult. So it's a tough time for our family right now, as I know it is for you and everybody else. We do have games we play with them, a lot of puzzles. We are spoiling them with toys right now and just trying to do anything we can to keep them from watching TV and keep their brains engaged.
Absolutely.
And a lot of that is pool time because it is so hot out here.
Absolutely. I definitely understand that. We're here in Tennessee, where it's not necessarily as hot as Arizona, but it gets pretty
humid.
Hot. Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely humid. It's almost like feeling like you're swimming when you go outside, for sure.
How are you dealing, if you don't mind?
No, not. Thank you for asking. I appreciate that. Day by day. I think it got, so my daughter, it's funny you mentioned that. My daughter is technically still on spring break. So she went on spring break in March, like March 9th and stuff like that, and just hasn't been back to school since. Right. And so that was a bit crazy. And then her birthday is in May. And so it didn't hit her until she turned 8. It didn't hit her until the morning of her birthday. She was like, wow, nobody's coming over, because we usually have a party and stuff like that. So it's like me and my wife, we're kind of okay, but it's kind of, helping my daughter to understand. It's like, Dad, can we go here? Like, no, we can't go here. Like, why we can't go here? Because unfortunately, baby, people are sick. And so we can't go to, and this was before stuff was started to reopen. Like we would go to the jump park, the indoor jump park and stuff like that, or other places, right? Like, baby, we can't go because it's sick. So honestly, it's more so like, it's parent 2.0, I guess, or whatever, just trying to make sure she's okay and console her and stuff like that. But, other than that, we're okay. We go on daily walks. We make a trip to Target every once in a while, or sometimes we just go for a drive.
Yep. We do a lot of those. Do a lot of those, man. Yeah, it's, I really feel for anybody, especially anybody with kids right now. Yeah. It is so hard. And it's very stressful for the parents too. I mean, my poor wife, we've had to give up help. It's very hard on everybody. And my wife is actually from Canada, and the border's closed. So, not like she was planning on seeing her family anytime soon anyway, but now it's literally impossible.
Right.
So it's tough.
That's rough. Well, my thoughts are with your family and all of you, Startup Nation, as you navigate this new normal, I guess, for however long it's going to be. But just know that, given our entrepreneurial mindset and given our honestly just our humanness, if you will, we will get through this together. And I'm pretty sure David seconds that for sure.
Absolutely, man. We will figure it out.
Absolutely. We will always figure it out. I always say, man, like if you ever watch like that movie Independence Day, I'll always bet on humans if there's like a world thing, even though with everything going on and stuff like that. I know it's kind of hard to say that now, but I always bet on humans when there's something that kind of, threatens our lives and stuff like that for sure. But that's neither here or there for sure. I want to ask you this, man. We'll go ahead and start wrapping up here for sure, man. There's somebody out there that's feeling a little down, feeling a little discouraged, stuff like that. Give them some words of encouragement, kind of take us out for the day, if you don't mind, David.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I had the opportunity, a very amazing opportunity, to meet with a bunch of people that I wouldn't have otherwise met with. One of them was Conan O'Brien, because I used to be in the organization, the student organization that brought speakers to campus. So I would meet these speakers before they'd speak. And one of them was Conan O'Brien. And his advice to me and to everybody he spoke with was always get in over your head. And I mean, right now that's easy, right? Like everybody is in over their head with COVID.
For sure.
But always getting in over your head means you're always stretching yourself to do stuff you couldn't do before and challenging yourself to do what you couldn't do before and improving and growing. And I think it is so important to get in over your head. And it's not easy. Right. I had years with Cellit, 2 years. And now I've had, now Handwrytten's doing well, but it took 4 or 5 or 6 years to get there. And if you stay, in business, there's no timeline. There's no, in 2 years, if you don't make it, you're out. As long as you stay on that field and you keep playing that game, eventually you're going to cut through. Now, I'm not saying it's always possible. You run out of money or whatever, but for the most part, if you can just stick with it and know that it's very rare for a business to be a blowout success in less than 2 years, and just stick with it for a few years, I think you have a good shot at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Overextend. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And that's going to wrap up this time in our session on the Startup Life with David. David, it's been a pleasure, my man. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Dominic. It's been a pleasure for me as well.
No worries. And as always, Startup Nation, if you have an idea, be about that life, the Startup Life. If you want to let us know what you think about our show, have an idea for a show topic, or would like to advertise on our show, send us a message on the Startup Life Podcast Facebook page. And while you are there, like and follow our page as well. It's a great way for us to engage with you, Startup Nation, and really grow our community. The link is there in the show notes. Subscribe to the show as it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, or even on your Facebook timeline or any other platform you like to get your podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and you find our content valuable, please give us a 5-star rating, as it will help us climb the charts and help more people find our show. You can also listen to the show on the Startup Life Podcast new website. There you will find the all-new startup blog where I write on many topics that are interesting and helpful to you on your path to entrepreneurship. And hey, if you have an idea, be about that life, the Startup Life.